I'm Rebecca, 32. The silence in the dining room was suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. My hands were steady as I scrolled through my phone, the cold light illuminating the shocked faces around the table. I looked up, meeting each pair of eyes in turn, and said, "Let me refresh your memory about this simple life of mine." My family sat there, frozen in their seats, expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. The expensive crystal wine glasses on the table, a symbol of our family's supposed prosperity, now seemed like a cruel mockery. It all started with that fateful family dinner, a monthly tradition that had turned into a nightmare. My parents, Henry and Grace, were a proud couple. Henry, 60, was a retired military officer with a strict and no-nonsense attitude. Grace, 58, was a former schoolteacher, always proper and concerned about appearances. They had always held high expectations for their children. My older sister, Olivia, 36, was a high-flying corporate lawyer at a top-tier firm. She was elegant, with her perfectly coiffed hair and designer suits. Her husband, Ethan, 38, was a financial analyst, always calculating and ambitious. They had two children, Lily, 13, a prodigy in mathematics, and Max, 11, who was already excelling in tennis at a national level. My younger brother, Lucas, 27, was a charismatic entrepreneur. He owned a chain of trendy coffee shops in the city. He was engaged to Mia, 25, a fashion blogger with a large social media following. Mia was always dressed in the latest fashion, her camera constantly in hand to capture every moment. As I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home that evening, the smell of my mother's famous roast wafted through the air. The old oak tree in the front yard, a constant in my life, swayed gently in the breeze. I took a deep breath, knowing that this dinner would be like all the others, with me in the background, the invisible support system. Walking through the front door, I was greeted by my mother. "Rebecca, dear, your father's laptop is acting up again. You know how he gets when he can't check his military forums," she said, a worried look on her face. I smiled and set down my purse, the weight of it a reminder of my own silent burdens. In the living room, I found my father hunched over his laptop, muttering under his breath. "Let me take a look, Dad," I said softly, moving him aside. Within minutes, I had fixed the software glitch and updated his security settings. He patted my shoulder absent-mindedly, already engrossed in his forums again. "Olivia's in the kitchen with the kids," my mother called out. I made my way to the kitchen, where Olivia was showing off her latest legal victory to my mother while helping Lily with her math homework on an iPad. "Oh, Rebecca's here. This iPad keeps freezing. Can you fix it?" she asked, not even looking up. I took the iPad and quickly diagnosed the problem, a simple storage issue. Just then, Lucas bounded into the kitchen, full of energy. "Sorry we're late. Had some issues with a coffee bean supplier," he said, wrapping my mother in a big hug. Mia followed him, taking pictures of the kitchen for her blog. "This place is so Instagram-worthy, Mrs. Thompson," she gushed. As we sat down at the dining table, the conversation quickly turned to my siblings' achievements. Olivia talked about a high-profile case she was working on, one that could make headlines in the legal world. Ethan chimed in with his investment strategies and how he was on track to double their family's wealth. Lucas boasted about his plans to open a new coffee shop in a prime location, and Mia talked about her upcoming brand collaborations. My mother and father listened intently, their faces beaming with pride. I tried to share a story about a major cyber-security project I had just completed, but Olivia interrupted me. "That's nice, but have you seen the article about my case in the legal journal? It's being cited everywhere," she said, pulling out her phone to show the article. The dismissal was familiar, but it still stung. I sat there, holding my fork, the words dying on my lips. I remembered all the times I had helped them. When Olivia's law firm servers were hacked, I had worked around the clock to recover their data. When Lucas's coffee shop's point-of-sale system crashed during a busy weekend, I had fixed it in no time. And I had been secretly paying a portion of my parents' mortgage for years so they could maintain their comfortable lifestyle. As the evening wore on, the conversation became more competitive. Ethan told a story about a complex financial deal he had closed, and Lucas talked about a new marketing campaign for his coffee shops. Mia showed off her latest sponsored post on Instagram. Then, someone finally asked about my plans. Any exciting projects coming up, Rebecca? Lucas asked, a hint of mockery in his voice. Before I could answer, he laughed and said, "Yeah, what's the latest password problem you're solving?" Everyone chuckled, and I felt my anger rising. Olivia decided to pile on. It must be nice having such an easy job. No real pressure, just fixing computers, she said, sipping her wine. I could feel the tension in the air, and the old oak tree outside seemed to creak in sympathy. The final straw came when Olivia leaned forward and said, "How does it feel being the most useless one here?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. And then they all started laughing. That's when I snapped. I set my fork down with a loud clink and said, "You think I'm useless? Well, let me tell you something." I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and began to reveal all the financial support I had provided over the years. Olivia's face turned pale as I mentioned the money I had paid for Lily and Max's private school tuition when Ethan's investments had gone bad. Lucas's eyes widened when I told him that I was the anonymous investor who had saved his coffee shop expansion. My parents looked at each other in shock as I reminded them of the mortgage payments. The revelation was like a bomb going off. The room fell into a stunned silence. Olivia tried to regain her composure. "You never said these payments were from you," she stammered. I looked at her coldly and replied, "You never asked." Lucas was the first to find his voice. "The anonymous investor, that was you?" he whispered. I nodded. "I created a shell company to make it look legitimate. You were so grateful to that mystery person, but it was me all along." Olivia's husband, Ethan, sat there, his face ashen. "My investment losses, the money that kept us afloat, that was you," he said, barely audible. I simply nodded again. My parents looked at me with a mix of guilt and realization. "Rebecca, we had no idea," my father said. I looked at him, my voice steady. "Yes, you did. I showed you the bank statements years ago, but you chose to believe it was some other source." I stood up and walked over to the computer desk where my father kept his financial records. I logged into the banking system and began canceling all the automatic transfers that had been supporting their lifestyle. "What are you doing?" Olivia asked, panic in her voice. "Exactly what you suggested. I'm removing the most useless person from your lives," I replied, not looking up. Lucas jumped up. "Rebecca, wait. We can pay you back." "I'll restructure my business," he said. I turned to him and said, "From what bank, Lucas? Your coffee shops are already over-leveraged. The expansion was only possible because of me." Olivia tried a different approach. "Rebecca, you're upset and we're sorry. But cutting off all support won't solve anything." I laughed. "You think this is about hurt feelings? You've spent the whole evening tearing me down." As I finished canceling the last transfer, I turned back to the table. My family looked like strangers to me now. They were no longer the successful, confident people they had pretended to be. They were dependent and entitled, and they had taken my kindness for granted for far too long. The drive home was a blur. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from my family, but I ignored them all. Back in my apartment, I sat in my favorite armchair, the soft leather cushioning me. The awards and certificates on my wall, a testament to my achievements in the tech world, stared back at me. Over the next few days, the messages from my family became more desperate. Olivia sent long texts about how the school fees were due and how they were in a financial bind. Lucas called, his voice strained, saying that his coffee shops were on the verge of collapse. My parents sent heartfelt letters, saying they loved me and were sorry. But I didn't respond immediately. I threw myself into my work. 3 months later, I received a call from a major tech company. They offered me a partnership position, recognizing my expertise in cyber security. The salary was more than double what I was making, and the signing bonus was enough to secure my future. 6 months later, I was on the cover of a leading technology magazine. I sent a copy to my parents' house with a note that said, "Thought you might be interested in seeing what useless looks like." Gradually, over the course of the next year, My family members began to reach out with genuine apologies. Olivia wrote a long letter admitting that her jealousy had driven her to belittle me. Lucas visited my office, humbled by the experience. He said, "I thought I was self-made, but I was wrong." My parents finally understood the true extent of their actions. They promised to change, and slowly, we began to rebuild our relationships. Now, family dinners are different. My achievements are celebrated, and my voice is heard. I've learned to set boundaries, and I only offer my help when I truly want to. The old family dynamic, where I was the invisible support, is gone. I've finally found my worth, and I'll never let anyone make me feel useless again. The old oak tree, the coffee shop equipment, and the laptop, these were the props that witnessed the transformation of my family and me. And as I look back on that fateful dinner, I realize that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand up for yourself and show the world your true worth.